Ayo Goombas.
What episode is this?
Peanut Gallery? This is episode 3 of the Peanut Gallery.
So today we're doing something a little bit different. Not gripes at movies per se, but gripes we have with the viewers. You all! We're going to be sharing 2 movies that we think don't get enough credit and movies that I find that people just don't know about, which is just hilarious. I think everybody has those movies that your friend in college told you about, oh, you haven't seen this, dude, no way. I thought it'd be a fun topic because it's just so personable, and it just get the movies out there. That's the goal of this.
I think it's worth noting that of all the movies that come out in the world, I think the average viewer is only exposed to, naturally, you're gonna have some really good movies that just never see the light of day, but it does not make it a bad movie.
I can see the argument for one of my movies being bad, but Eight-Legged Freaks, a 2002 masterpiece. This is a VHS, people. Yes, they still exist.
Is this a snack?
Go ahead, take a look at that cover art right there.
I have never seen this movie.
Oh man, it's so good. Quick synopsis for everybody. What happens when a 10-year-old who grows up in a small mining town who has no friends, who's nerdy and into spiders, what does he do for fun? He makes friends with the one weirdo guy who has a huge, ginormous spider farm for no reason. Some trucker who was too tired drinking coffee swerves to miss a rabbit on the thruway and spills a bunch of toxic waste that then mutates the crickets that this guy at the spider farm feeds the spiders, and then bam, you get spiders the size of SUVs, and it's pandemonium.
Thriller genre or horror genre?
Honestly, I would say a comedic horror, almost like a Scream type. The only reason this town is on the map is because of the natural resources, which ironically later on in the film, the spiders take over. Not only are they mobile, agile, hostile, they got a huge web of natural tunnels that they can just be spiders.
This is a surprisingly complex movie for what I would assume would be a very straightforward title.
Oh no, dude, it's classic. I'm not the bravest dude running, but I don't really mess with spiders. But there's multiple layers to the movie beside the threat of the spiders that make it good. There's love, there's loss, there's a kick-ass dirt bike scene. Who doesn't love that?
I'm sold.
And also, for whatever reason, Scarlett Johansson's in this movie.
Done. We're done. Both of my movies are movies that I've seen in the last year. I'm really glad that these movies fell into my lap, both from recommendations. The first movie I have is Denzel Washington, Man on Fire.
Ooh.
Now this, by any means, is not a bad film, but I do think it is not as notorious as it should be. The story of Man on Fire is essentially a ex-military figure who lost faith in humanity. He gets hired as a bodyguard. I love action films, but a really good action film tickles both your desire for a spectacle and your desire to feel some kind of emotion. That's not just sweat. Man on Fire, it's a very, very even, 50-50 personal inner connection story and outer physical attack mode story. The whole climax builds to not just a big, intense, shootout like most action films, but it's this very deep emotional scene between the characters and their interpersonal connections that have been built up. And I think that's a rarity in action films. Mm-hmm. This movie was not on my radar until it was recommended to me, and I don't think it's on a lot of people's radar, and I think it's worth it. If you like action movies, and if you like Denzel Washington, it's a win-win. I honestly, for the life of me, I don't know why this movie isn't as in the know as it is.
This was another movie that I had the VHS for, but for the life of me, I couldn't find it. It might be gone forever. Starship Troopers. Oh, and my iPad died, but he'll throw in the graphic. Based on Robert I. Heinlein's 1952 model of the same name. It's got all sorts of themes that are 100% conducive today to what's going on, of us versus them, the military versus regular people, militarism, patriotism, the government and government overreach and shady things the government does. But then you're fighting arachnids in this movie too, so a little bit of an arachnid theme going on. But they're different because they're aliens, and they're a whole other species, and they're smart, and they'll kill us.
Give us a quick synopsis for those who don't know the movie. It's been on my watch list for a couple years now, I do have to say.
In this futuristic world, you go to high school, And then you can either become a citizen, and the way you do that is you go through some type of military service or not. But it's interesting, the non-citizens are like rich, so they don't really have to go do any kind of service. Rico's parents are rich, and they don't want him to join the military, basically. But Rico's called to it to try to impress a girl. And then what happens, folks? It goes downhill really fast. Service guarantees citizenship.
So is this a sequel, then? Is it, Eight-Legged Freaks, and then the sequel, Starship Troopers? Is that what I'm taking from here?
No, but again, Starship Troopers is also a trilogy movie, too. And it's just hilarious because, by all accounts, it can 100% argument be made that it's a bad movie. I don't even think the first Starship Troopers went to the theaters. It just went to DVD.
Busters.
Literally. R.I.P. to Blockbuster. But again, there's just a lot of funny moments.
My second film, Moon, with Sam Rockwell.
I have not seen this.
I love sci-fi. Moon was the first sci-fi I had seen after 2000 it had the same kind of makes you think like a good sci-fi does. Kind of like a modern time Blade Runner. When we run out of resources, we go to the moon, we start mining different materials there, sort of thing. But to keep costs down, they just have one person. The main character, Sam Rockwell, is about to finish his 3-year service working on these moon grinder machines. He's a couple days from being sent home, and everything goes downhill. It's not only sci-fi bad things happening, it's also just the mental toll of being alone for 3 years, which I think is kind of relevant also amidst quarantine.
A lot of feelings, unfortunate feelings, being alone in quarantine, and I can only imagine that same way in space.
Right. I'm not usually a fan of like 1 or 2 set movies, because I feel like they really come off kind of as plays. But this one is creepy enough and interesting enough. You're right at the edge of your seat, trying to figure out what's going on, and you're freaked out, convoluted, misshapen emotions. I hadn't heard of it until 2020. I've heard of Starship Troopers. I've heard of Eight-Legged Freaks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Moon, is that a new movie? It was like, no, 2009.
I think that's the cool thing about movies is that it's almost like when you're going through just some little town you've never been to and you find an awesome restaurant. It's like you're not expecting anything. And that's the same with movies. Just like you were saying, you hear it from a third party. Oh, just check this out. And then you go and then it blows you away. These movies under promise on the face like value because you don't really know anything about them, but then they end up being good or you just like it and it over delivers.
I think my favorite thing too is often when I see an old film that I had never seen before, you can't help but connect it to the context of where you're at. So many movies come out every year and they're a product of that time, but then somehow they have an extra like onion layer when you watch them out of their time period and they're still relevant. It's almost like getting the satisfaction of knowing how this movie aged while watching the movie for the first time. Oh, you like this movie? But look, it's also like 11 years old and it's still good. You're like, wow, I have a deeper respect for that movie. Of course, the opposite thing happens too. Like that movie can come out and then 10 years later you're like
oh god,
why was this good? It separates the movie fads from the movie fads.
Wow.
So those are 4 movies that we think, but the reputation, they have not earned the reputation that I think they deserve. A good movie, a movie worth watching, doesn't necessarily mean it's a master of cinema. There's so many different things that make movies good and enjoyable. There are movies that make you think, and there are movies that you watch because you don't want to think.
Exactly right. Tell us if you've seen these movies, if you hate these movies, or what's on your list of things you think more people should know about. I think all our watch lists need more movies.
Keep watching movies. Keep watching us. Subscribe, share, comment.
Do it.
Thank you, as always, for watching. We will see you next week, and until then,